Well, Vanderbilt Sigma Chi Phi. This is my other grandfather, Dan Sanders, who started Ellison Place Soda Shop, his 1914 Vanderbilt Annual. This guy right here has got as much Vanderbilt in him as I do. We have had a rich history of Vanderbilt, and we've also had a wonderful history in this Kiwanis Club with gifted speakers. Certainly today is no change. Last year we heard Hope Hines speak, and he was one of the best speeches I've heard at Kiwanis. His book is out, In Hindsight, and it is terrific. Jim Harwell, Ellen's perhaps favorite son, I'm not sure, I wouldn't tell Sam, but is a wonderful author, and he has written a couple of books. Our newest Kiwanian and speaker today, Jim Harwell, is a fourth-generation native Nashville, graduate of both Montgomery Bell Academy and Vanderbilt University. He's a journalist and a writer. And following in the footsteps of his legendary sports columnist, Fred Russell, this guy right here, who, by the way, spoke to our club. He did it as a favor to me back in, I think, about 1982 or 83. Fred Russell spoke to us. And boy, you're going to hear more about him. Hey, you need to come up here. We're getting ready to induct you too. Get up here. His beloved grandfather, Fred Russell, was an incredibly gifted communicator with his typewriter and a masterful prankster. I had the privilege of serving way back in 1970 as copy boy for the Nashville Banner Sports Department, which Mr. Russell ran, and listened to the writer. Did you just go out? And listen to the talent that was inside that department. Waxo Green, C.B. Fletcher, Edgar Allen, George Leonard, Joe Biddle, and Joe Harwell. Well, Mr. Russell used to pull jokes back then on all kinds of people, and he even got me once. So today, Jim Harwell is going to tell you about his newest book, Confessions of a Practical Joker. He's also written another book, A Tale of Two Opposites, Cats and Dogs. Now, Jim is a member of the National Football Foundation Board of Middle Tennessee, the Phoenix Club, Cross Point Church, Toastmasters, Chamber of Commerce, NBA Alumni Association, and Vanderbilt Alumni Association. Jim is a fine person, was nervous as hell about me introducing him today. He said, don't make it too flowery, Big George. I hope I haven't, but we wanted to make Ellen proud since she was here. So, I've been in this club since 1976. I've brought in well over 200 members, and this is the first time that I think in Kiwanis history that we have inducted as a new member our guest speaker. So we're getting 2 for 1. Welcome, native Nashvilleian, and your newest Kiwanian, and your guest speaker, Jim Harwell, son of Ellison.
Thank you, George, so much. Great to be a member. I'm really privileged to be here. This is a practical joke on me, right? Well, I guess they're working on that. But can you hear me in the back? No. Let's see.
Some of y'all like to move up front? You got polio? Let's go. You can move up front. There you go, Pat. Why don't you take charge of it?
Well, it really is a privilege to be here today, and even more special knowing my grandfather spoke to this club. I will definitely try to speak up. George did say he wants me to talk about the book, but he also said he's particularly interested in the history of cheerleading. He wanted me to look into that, and I did some research, and I want to tell you what I found if we have time at the end of this talk. And that's a Fred Russell joke, by the way. Got to get my notes here. But I know this is a fun, colorful group, so I know you have more stories than I do. So please feel free to interrupt me, raise your hand. This has been a fun book to be involved in. I want to tell you one quick story. This is the first practical joke I came across in knowing Freddie Russell. I was hanging out with my grandparents at their house in their little TV room, a den in the side of their house. Nice room. It had desk, classic photos on the wall. The walls of this room are lined with bookshelves. Really nice hardback books, classics. I was looking at the titles. I like to read. So there was, I saw To Kill a Mockingbird, Wuthering Heights, The Great Gatsby, and then I saw a book that looked like all the other books called The Sex Life of Fred Russell. I couldn't believe it. I mean, no one showed this to me. I just stumbled upon it out of the blue. So I wanted to check it out. I made sure no one was near the room. I pulled the book off the shelf, opened it up. It was full of blank pages. I thought Joe might like that. I hope you heard that.
I did hear that. I did.
Appropriate.
But yeah, I want this to be an informal time. It has just been a lot of fun. If I speak to groups, they know stories. They start telling me stories I haven't heard. This book is about our parents, grandparents, friends, colleagues, relatives, neighbors. You know, many of you will know a lot of people in this book. People in this club contributed to this book. So the credit for it really goes to the great people of Nashville who they knew the stories, they passed them along to me. There's more than 140 practical jokes, more than 140 practical jokes and stories in the book, contributed by probably more than 100 people and there's more than 700 people in the book. I've really tried to include as many people as possible. So you got kind of a tapestry there, and hopefully a glimpse kind of the greatest generation. That's really what I'm happy about, is that it's more than just practical jokes, but it's hopefully a tribute to the greatest generation and a glimpse of these great men and women who helped build this community, build this state, and even many of them were national leaders. And so there's 9 main... Working hard back here. I'm impressed. So, you know, basically, I do want to give a few more practical jokes. Who here has heard the referee joke? This is, you know, maybe some people haven't. Drew has. Basically, Freddie and his friends were, you know, they all had colorful senses of humor, like this club. And, you know, they would concoct these jokes and practical jokes and actually be able to pull them off. And Freddie was really kind of the ringleader, but he wasn't the only one. So this was many years ago. Vandy Athletic Department is hosting a big event. Okay, we're back here. Hosting a big event here in Nashville. It was to introduce the new AD and the new Vandy football coach to the Board of Trust. The Chancellor was there, big donors. So there's more than 100 people at this party. And it's at Fred Russell's house here in Nashville. So Freddie and a few others planned it out, and they got a young guy to dress up as a referee. This was right in the brunch before the Vandy-UT basketball game. So it's the biggest basketball game of the season. So this referee shows up. He's got a whistle on. I mean, he shows up at the party and just says, "Oh, I'm a friend of Freddie Russell's, you know. I didn't know you were having a party. Come on in." So he goes back to the wet bar and starts downing vodka tonics. He's just, within minutes, and it's water, though. The bartender's in on it. And he's having 2 or 3, he's getting gregarious and just talking about how he loves Vandy basketball and grew up a Vandy fan, and just they cannot believe that the referee is doing this. They start moving away from him. And the Chancellor even somebody heard the Chancellor say, "I know nothing about this," telling a governor. And this is in the era of point shaving. So, you know, they can't believe it. They find out when they see that he's not on the court at the game. So that's kind of the jokes that they would pull, you know, just having fun. That one, it was a big event, so I think that kind of makes it more interesting that it was an important event. Another good one is the Prostitution Orientation Committee letter, which it's a good one. Freddie, this was pulled on, one of the first big jokes pulled on Freddie's best friend, Max Benson. So this is years ago, but there's a camp in the largest Army base camp in the U.S. near Nashville, and they banned prostitution, kicked the prostitutes out. So Freddie sends this letter. It's in the book, but it's a 1-page letter, and it's very, you know, serious, and it's from Max Benson, the committee chairman. And he says, this has presented the most difficult situation our committee is attempting to solve. But he goes on to basically invite important members of the community to keep a former prostitute at their house where they will be free from temptation, where they can assimilate back into the culture and everything. And send it to like 150 Nashvillians. And Max knew nothing about it. He gets a call from his mentor saying, "You've gone way too far." And a couple of men actually called up and were intrigued about the idea. So that's a good one, and it's funny to have the letter here. But there's several original letters. Freddie they used a lot of techniques to pull off the jokes. Notes, letters, phone calls, impersonations. He had these voices, his woman's voice, his oriental voice. My mom would hear him talking on the phone as a child, when she was a child, in his woman's voice. She just thought dads did that. But he would call, if somebody hit an errant golf shot, he would call late that night, to Bill Hendricks. "Did you hit a shot?" In his woman's voice. "Did you hit a ball into the yard on Harding Road?" And he'd say, "Well, yes. How'd you know?" "Well, it hit me in the blank." Some pride, it just catch people off guard, having fun. But the main thing was, I spent several years researching. Freddie started me on, he wanted to do a book, and he hired me to research his columns and books. And what I saw was that the Greatest Generation really had colorful senses of humor. They had fun, and it was all about, they grew up in a different time before technology really changed society. And they had fun with each other, practical jokes and stories and things like that. And so I think that's what it's all about. They had that kind of Mark Twain storytelling style of humor. Another good one, the shrinking hat. Who's heard that? The shrinking hat joke is pretty, it's one of the well-known ones, but another one on Max Benson. So Max was a nice dresser. Do you know Ed Benson, Max's son? Yeah, Eddie Benson lives in Nashville, Max's son. But Max worked at the shoe place. Genesco. He was an executive. He wore nice clothes and shoes and had the hats. So his hat was embroidered with his initials. So Freddie and his friends got the same hat in a half inch smaller, with the initials and everything. And so they would switch this hat back and forth. When he might be at a restaurant or he might be at work, and they would get somebody to just secretly switch it. And Max is thinking, he puts it on, it doesn't fit. He's thinking, what's going on? Is my head getting bigger, or what? They did this for several weeks. It just went on. And somebody even saw Max at a restaurant, put it on, and it didn't fit. And he looked at it and just walked out. So he eventually called a doctor to set up an appointment. Just look at it. That's when Freddie finally told him about it. So those were kind of the one-time jokes. There were also recurring jokes that he would pull. These would, at various times through the years, he would pull these pranks. For example, initiations at work, or jokes at sporting events, where I hadn't heard of this happening, but he would pull pranks on people actually participating in the sporting event. Coaches, managers, umpires. He would know a new umpire was his first game. So this is at Sulphur Dell, popular baseball, a lot of people. And he would send a note down early in the game. Larry Schmitto tells this story. He would send a note down early in the game and set the guy up. Send a note down saying, "William, welcome to the Southern League. You're doing a great job. I hear you're one of the great new umpires. Martha Davis." So this umpire is like, "Man, this is an avid fan. Knows that this is my first game." Later in the game, there's a questionable call. The fans boo the umpire. Every game you go to, there's bad calls, right? So Freddie sends a note down very quickly. Between innings, the bat boy takes it to the umpire. He opens it up. "William, you just called that third strike on my nephew. I came all the way from Huntsville, Alabama to watch him play. You better be nice to him, you son of a bitch." Martha Davis. And he's like, "Who is this nut fan?" So think about it. The umpire's on the field. He can't really do anything. Everybody's watching him. Just has to put it in his pocket. Deal with it. That's the kind of joke. Just having fun with. Did that to coaches in football games to try to get a player into the game who hadn't played. And it worked. A note from Coach, coached years ago, but number 29 is actually a muddy game. There's one player for Vanderbilt who hasn't played, number 29. Freddie sees that, sends a note down. Coach, number 29 is the son of a big donor to the school. I promised him I would hope that he gets in the game. It would be great if he could get in the game. A few plays later, the player trots out to the field. Some of these recurring jokes, though, were simple and silly things. The roommate switch joke, or the hard of hearing joke. Has anybody heard that one? So the people would call Freddie and ask for favors a lot. He was the sports editor, and people knew who he was. So they would ask for tickets. They would ask for help getting jobs. They would ask for rides places. So I think what he started to do was have fun with this. So someone would call and ask for a ride. So Freddie agrees to help him get a ride. He calls around, finds a driver, and says, Bill, thanks for giving this fellow a ride. You can pick him up at this location. One thing I need to tell you, though, is that he's really hard of hearing, so you really have to talk loud for him to hear you. These are two people who don't know each other. So then he calls John, says, John, I found a ride for you. He's going to pick you up at your house. One thing I need to tell you, though, is that he's really hard of hearing, so you really have to talk loud. So the two people just yell at each other. And that is a good one. I mean, that's one of the good ones, tickets and jobs and things. But I think, again, the big picture is they had fun. They had colorful senses of humor. They were, it was a different time and era, and that's what I saw in my research. I did put together quotes, jokes, and anecdotes, funny things, all the people, Yogi Berra, Dizzy Dean, these people were legendary, but really funny, and so I think it was just kind of indicative of the generation. Another good one at work. How are we on time?
Are you right? You're fine.
A good one at work, initiations at work. The banner, newspapers were the big thing, and so someone's first day at work in Freddie's department, he would often play this joke. And as I thought about it, I see these different layers of how this is kind of clever. So this new young guy's in the sports department, first day at work. About midway through the day, Bill Roberts, who's been there for 30, 40 years, goes into Freddie's office. They get into an argument. Bill storms out, says, I'm quitting, throws his apron down, and he's gone. 15 minutes later, Freddie calls the new guy into his office. You're the guy now. Bill's gone. We need you to lay out the paper. You got to step up. So he spends the rest of the day. This young guy lays out the newspaper, goes home thinking this is his job now. Goes home, he's like, comes back the next day, everything's back to normal. So you think about it. This young guy is thinking I'm assuming he goes home thinking, man, this is my opportunity. I mean, now I'm going to be laying out the paper, baby, for a long time. So just having fun, initiations at work. Another one was the obituary writer. He would pull a joke on the obituary writer, call in as a woman reporting, the news. Or airport drop-off joke is a good one, where would put a sign up when dropping off somebody to the airport, a sign that says, flight insurance not available for flight, whatever. So this is, the banner would give Freddie to give rides to the airport, but Freddie would actually get the banner art department to make up the sign. The sign was made, but to add in the flight number, Freddie would find the flight number out, get that onto the sign, and then when he'd take him to the airport, get the luggage and everything, but then slip the sign up on the counter. So Freddie would just watch the reactions, and the really interesting former banner employee told me that what would happen is the employee of the airline would see it and think that it was real too. So there's all the customers thinking, why is there no flight insurance available for this flight? What's the deal? Well, I guess it's not available. I don't know. They go check. There's all this confusion. And they would pull jokes on anybody. Chancellors, presidents, CEOs. It didn't matter who. Politicians, anybody. It didn't matter. Usually those people were untouchable. And But again, thank you for your interest. I really appreciate you graciously welcoming me. And what are there any other stories, Watt or Mom, that you all that come to mind? Okay. Well, the story I told you at the beginning about finding that book, that is true. That's how it happened. Freddie was a man of few words. I mean, he didn't talk about. I didn't know this stuff. 2 years ago, I didn't know any of this. I knew like a couple of jokes, but he did pull one on me. A year or two after that book thing, he pulled a joke on me. Just a simple thing, but I'm in high school and it's my first year at NBA, and I get a call from the headmaster saying it's a Super Bowl Sunday, saying, Jim, Gordon Von Duren. I couldn't believe, why would he be calling me? And, hi, Mr. Von Duren. Jim, we're having a Latin Club meeting today at 4:30. We want you to be there. And I'm immediately thinking, I didn't know there was a club like this. I've heard of it, but I'm not in it. And so I had to say, yes, I'll go, and I'm going to miss the Super Bowl. It's like, this is the worst. This is horrible. Sunday, and I think I asked my mom, what's the deal? 10 minutes later, Freddie called and said, Jim, you going to that Latin Club meeting? And it was Cotton. He had gotten Cotton to call me. So they just would do this to anybody, have fun.
What about the brand new minister that came to dinner at the Russell house, and then the fellow that was very proud of his Ford automobile?
Okay. Any kind of situation would come up, and Freddie would see some way to kind of exploit it. So, but this was one pulled on Freddie, right? The new minister. Oh no, the new minister, Grace Stone. Is that the one?
I think it was Russ Mumford, wasn't it? But anyway. The fellow brought something to the front door.
Oh yeah, this was pulled on Freddie, a good one. So new ministers Friday night is having dinner with Fred and Kay Russell, new West End Methodist, and so Freddie's daughter set it up to have a liquor store delivery guy walk in, right. They're sitting in the room, and this guy walks in with a case of whatever. And walks right in, and she had coached him up and said, look, just walk in. My parents don't mind. And just say, hey, Kay, Fred, how are you? Where do you want this? Same place? And so Freddie's wife was like, hey, yeah, well, come on in. Yeah, leave it right here. And Freddie's like, never seen this guy. The guy leaves. And the next day, Freddie calls Carolyn and finally figures out that it's water that's in the jugs of, it's a prank. And then there was another one where...
The car that during the Christmas vacation.
Oh, yeah. This is one, okay. The students at Vandy, right? They took apart a Ford car. A guy student went on vacation. They took apart his entire car, took it into his dorm room, right? And put it back together in his dorm room. So you could do that with cars, and that's one that Watt recalls that, and the guy gets back from his trip, and it's like, he walks into the room and sees his car. But again, it's been a lot of fun. I do have some books in the back. I wish I could give the books away. We're trying to break even. Yes?
How many jokes did Joe White tell you that you had to edit from the book because they weren't funny?
That's my dad, Kenny. Mom's on the phone, Dad. She says, come on home, you're drunk.
Did you ever find that story about the Kiwanis Club that you wrote about? That I mentioned that there was one Kiwanis meeting that you mentioned in your book there, and I can't remember.
Yeah, the Kiwanis Club's definitely in this book. I can't recall exactly, but yeah. And Freddie loves speaking in groups like this. I mean, that cheerleading joke is one that he would use, about whoever invited him. I can tell you that if you want. It's a little risque, not bad, but just fun jokes. He would say at the beginning of the speech, he'd say, I want to first say the name of Richard Feldman. I met him yesterday, waiting in line for coffee. We both found out we'd be giving a talk today, and we agreed to mention each other's names. So I want to say his name first. It's not really funny, but it's clever. It's a joke about how people overly promote themselves, and it's a satire. Any others, Watt, that come to mind?
Jim, I got one.
In the early 60s, my great uncle, who was a member of this club, Jimmy Armistead, used to run with Mr. Russell and E.B. Stallman. And there's a banner. The banner used to be Together with the Tennessean, and Newspaper Printing Corporation was the advertising arm of it. Well, the elevator from the first to second floor maybe could hold 6 or 7 people. Well, as it turns out, Uncle Jimmy, E.B. Stallman, Jimmy Stallman, and Mr. Russell are in the elevator with a brand new employee and a lady who was an assistant there. Well, Uncle Jimmy had a bad ankle, and he had a cane, and it was really crowded, 6 people in a little bitty thing. And so Uncle Jimmy, I guess this is where maybe I inherited a little bit of it, but he took his cane and messed with the lady's dress. She turned around, and Mr. Russell and E.B. Stallman were in on it. They just looked away, and the new employee, Jimmy Stallman, got really mad. And so when they got her, she turned around and almost smacked the guy because he was right next to her, and Uncle Jimmy's the one who was goosing her. And so when they got off the elevator, Jimmy Stallman said, "Son, my office right now." They pull that kind of stuff at the paper all the time. It's unbelievable.
That sounds like it, yeah.
Jim, what about the golf? Weren't there some golf jokes?
Yeah, the golf jokes like calling on the errant shots or putting a ball in a hole, making someone think they hit a hole in one, and they find out it's not.
Caddy was in on one of them.
And Caddy Freddie went to get his clubs, and it ends up he drives all the way to a city like New Orleans. His clubs are supposed to be there. Gets somebody to get the clubs, and it's filled with liquor bottles in the golf bag. And other ones too.
Read the book, that's what good idea.
Last question, and we gotta wrap it up. Ed, make it good.
I remember quite a while ago, April Fool's Day, and there was a story on the headline about highway going right through the Bellmead golf course. Was Mr. Russell responsible for that?
Yes. And that's one of the best ones with the April Fools. But I looked into it, and there's 18 April Fools jokes through the years. And they're in here, just, funny ones, and I even thought that some of them were real. I was like, oh, that's not really a joke. It was really a April Fool. And that's the best one. A highway going through Bellmead Country Club. And then they had it charted.
Did we lose the microphone again? Boom, boom, boom. Well, we're not.